everybody.
grabbed a drink.
Yeah, you should have grabbed a drink. Hi, everyone.
Water.
Welcome or whatever.
Yeah, like we're all doomer pilled tonight.
We're all doomer pilled tonight. Welcome to the show. I'm Ethan. I'm Ethan. Oh my God.
Gods, how long has it been since
I'm
you started
Dom. That's
doing?
Kitty.
Yeah.
If you're new, I used to go by Ethan back before I used my real name. Hi, Pragmatic. I see you here. Hi. Good to see you. Good to see you. I didn't share it on Discord because I'm not even finding the link to share it. So I don't. Oh, it's already in here. And everyone.
Oh, well, there you go.
We're live. Okay. Yeah. So, we were hoping against hope today that
we'd have good news.
We'd have good news. We needed 4 Republicans to stand with working people, and we had 2. And we had 218. They were like, "Eh."
And then you had a politician from Alaska that, for some carve-outs for her state, she sentenced to 17 million people losing their health care.
So here's what I actually want to open with, considering Murkowski. Her original deal was a carve-out for Alaska, as you said. It was a carve-out that said Alaska will be exempt from all of this. Instead, what they put in the bill was this. So the Republicans are all about, supposedly, getting rid of the waste, fraud, and abuse. By the way, because I sometimes sell Medicare policies, because I help people with their Medicare, I have to do a yearly certification called AHIP. AHIP is required by several of the Medicare carriers before you're allowed to sell their products, before you're allowed to represent their products. United Healthcare, Aetna, there's several that require AHIP. And AHIP is just updates you on what's going on with Medicare, what the policies are and procedures and yada, 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 yada. A big part of it is waste, fraud, and abuse. So this is something that Medicare and Medicaid, because it's CMS, Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services, care about. They care about waste, fraud, and abuse a lot because I know they do because I was tested on it. I just passed the test like a month ago. Like I just got my AHIP certification for 2025. Hi, Titan. It's good to see you. So here's what's in the bill. Here's what's in the final version of the bill. The top 10 states with what they call inaccurate billing is the term. The states with the most inaccurate billing, the top 10 states, are all exempt from any reductions in Medicaid. In other words, the states that have the biggest problems with waste, fraud, and abuse are all exempt. Kitty, off the top of your head, I know you haven't looked this up. Which state do you think has the most of these incorrect billings?
I mean, the irony, I would say Alaska, but considering Florida and Rick Scott was in charge of like the largest Medicare fraud ever, it could go either way.
Yeah, it's Alaska. So Murkowski didn't get Alaska exempted. She got 10 states exempted, including Alaska, who has the worst problems. Then has the gall to say, oh, well, I know some Americans won't be advantaged. That's the wording that she used. But, I hope the House sees that we're not there yet on this bill. That's what she said.
Why did you fucking vote for it?
That's what she said. I don't. You know what? I think I know why she voted for it. Racism.
Because also, wasn't she the one that said that she was scared of retaliation against, her family because of the MAGA cultists? Was that her?
This is what else the bill does. The bill turns ICE into it's something that is bigger than the DEA, bigger than the FBI, bigger than
The Marine Corps? The budget is going to be bigger than the
bigger
Marine
than the
Corps'
Marine Corps
budget.
combined. Not just bigger than the DEA, bigger than the FBI, bigger than the Marines, bigger than all of them combined.
More than most countries spend on their military.
Yes, we're spending only on ICE. And to get there, we took away SNAP benefits, Medicaid, after school programs, scientific grants. We threw all of that in the garbage so that we could give it the money to ICE. Somebody said, and I'm sorry, I forget who it was. I meant to save it and I did not. Somebody said, well, maybe with all of this extra budget, ICE can finally afford name tags. And I thought that was very funny.
Well, yeah, but here's the thing. Essentially, you have ICE being turned into a Gestapo to, black bag and remove anyone who speaks out against Trump. You've got a concentration camp / technically you could even consider it a death camp since it's in the middle of the other Everglades, and during hurricane season, anybody that's kept there is probably going to die. And if they try to escape, these FEMA trailers that don't have air conditioning and just have chain link fences to cage these people in, there's alligators that will eat them. That's why they're selling merch at this concentration camp for alligator Alcatraz.
Well, and here's the thing about alligators that I know because I grew up in Florida. Alligators are terrified of human beings. The only time an alligator is going to attack you is if you go into its nest and mess around with its eggs, or if you're a child and it's very hungry. Adult humans, it's not really interested. We aren't really that easy for an alligator to eat. So they're more likely to just run away from an adult human that's walking past them. If they get scared, they may hiss at you, that sort of thing, but they're probably not going to attack you. They'll eat your dog very quickly.
Oh, absolutely.
There's places in Florida where don't walk your dog here because an alligator will just snap up out of the river and eat your dog. But they're not as likely to attack adult humans. So it's kind of funny that they do that. But do you know what the reason is? And I wanted to say, Khaleesi, you're right. It is tax cuts for rich people too. Thank you for reminding me of that.
But that's always the plan.
Black people being eaten by gators is a very old racist trope in the South. That's a very old racist trope. That was one of the ways that they scared slaves from running from the plantations. They would threaten them, well, if you try to run away from this plantation, the gators are going to get you in the swamp. One of my grandfather's friends, his nickname was Gator. Because I don't know that they were friends. And this isn't the grandfather that I usually the grandfather that I usually talk about is my dad's father. This is my mom's father. It's a very different side of my family. But one of his friends, they nicknamed him Gator, and the story behind that was that he would drop people off in the Everglades to have them eaten by gators. That's a thing in the South. That's an old racist trope. Oh, we're gonna get there. We're getting there, Shadow. We're getting there. We're getting there. Now, there's an official in Alaska who wants to create a concentration camp surrounded by bears. And I don't know if you know anything about bears, but you can't just surround a place by bears. Bears just kind of live their own lives.
And if you try to corral them, it doesn't end well for you.
No, it doesn't.
Bears will absolutely eat a person. They will
sure.
absolutely take a person down. They are usually not as scared of people as gators.
During the Lewis and Clark expedition, Clark writes in his journal that because it was the first time a European person had ever encountered a grizzly bear, was the Lewis and Clark expedition. So the men were like, oh, let's hunt them. And the men gave up because they had to shoot the bears so many times to kill them that it just wasn't, they were just wasting all this ammunition. And they're like, well, we could kill a deer or something. Taking down a bear, it's not worth it. But bears, you can't really, bears just kind of go where they want to go and no one stops them. You can't I guess you could put a concentration camp in a forest and be like, well, there's bears in the forest. They might. But
I
a
mean,
brown bear is just
considering,
as likely to attack you as to just ignore you in the wild.
like, honestly, since when, like, are we doing, uh, racist and horrible policy by movie? You have Alligator Alcatraz, which, they're selling merch at the concentration camp,
Yeah,
which is, as I mentioned to Dom before the stream started, that is like some President Camacho level shit.
it
He
is.
has never seen Idiocracy.
Let's
Like,
Can we
everyone
move
in the
on,
chat
please?
needs to shame him
It's
for
my
it.
birthday, and you're being mean to me.
But
So
also,
I just want to remind everyone
also,
that it's my birthday, and
how how is
she's
alligator
choosing
Alcatraz
violence
any different than sharks with
on
frickin'
my
laser beams on their
birthday.
head?
On my
Sharks with
birthday.
frickin' laser beams on their head. This is the same energy.
Shadow says bears are like American emus. Yes. Yes. Bears, now polar bears are different. Polar bears will kill you for fun.
Yeah.
Brown bears,
Polar bears are
you
sociopaths.
don't know what they're going to do. And they're more likely, if they do attack you, to just maul you and leave. They won't usually try to eat a human. I guess it's more like a territorial thing. I don't know. Unless you come across their cubs. Now, mama with her cubs, even a brown bear, or I mean a black bear with a mom and her cubs, you don't. Have I told that story? I don't know that I've told that story. I'm going to tell the story very quickly. Right after I moved to Asheville, I was driving home from a place here we have called the Grove Park, which is a very nice restaurant, and you should visit the Grove Park sometime. It's very fantastic. It's about 11:30 at night, and I was coming down the road out of the Grove Park, which is on the side of a mountain. It's Asheville. And I saw a dog running across the street. So I stopped. And then I realized it wasn't a dog, it was a bear. And so I went to roll down the window to like lean out and take a picture. And then I saw two little baby bears right behind it. And I rolled the window back up. And I was like, oh, hell no. She will kill. If she knows that there's a human in this car, she'll come over here just to kill me. Be like, why are you looking at my kids? That will happen. I swear it will. But yeah, you don't mess around with bears and their children. They will hurt you. Thank you, Titan. It's great. Thank you. It's actually, it was nice. I got to hang out with my nephew and my dad today. So it's very nice. And thank you very much. I will watch it at some point. I will do that. At some point I will.
We're gonna do a
Titan
watch party
says,
in the Discord.
yes. Titan says not just a trope. African ancestry babies were sometimes used for bait. Oh my God. There were too many stories for them not to be true. I mean, we were horrible to slaves. I mean, we were.
I mean, we weren't that
horrible
great
to
to black people after
right.
slavery ended either. I mean,
Sure.
Tulsa, Rosewood,
Sure.
Jim
We've
Crow.
never been, particularly kind or good to black people, or anybody who's magnificently melanated. Honestly, Titan says I've seen bears. I've seen a gator less than a block from my house. There was a golf course that we used to play golf at, and there were gators in the lake. And if you hit your ball in that lake, don't get the ball. Like leave the ball there. But yeah, I mean, I grew up in Florida. Like it's
If
there's
you
a gator
can't
in
see
the
the
lake.
bottom of the body of water in Florida, assume there's at least one alligator in it. Like that's the
Yeah,
rule that everybody follows.
right. You just assume, and they never.
Sometimes you'll find them in your swimming pool, but at least you can see to the bottom
Occasionally.
and see that it's there.
Occasionally, if one of the reasons that some people in South Florida switched over to saltwater pools was because it keeps the gators out, because gators
They
don't
don't like
like
salt
saltwater.
water.
Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know how true that is, but that was what's one of the selling points of having a saltwater pool.
Also, you don't have the chemicals chlorine smell, or at least not as strong, because you still put a bit of chlorine in it, but not as much.
Right. It's like you only need like a third of it or something. We had a lot of pools as a kid. We never went saltwater route. I kind of wish we had. It probably wouldn't have been better, easier to maintain. Yeah, Shadow. It's a thing. Like in Florida, there's just gators. Like there are gators around.
Like hell, there was the kid that got yeeted into the water by a gator at Disney, like not that long ago.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Again, an adult, you're probably okay around a gator. It's if you're a kid, a dog, cats, something that can fit in their mouth rather easily. It's an instinctual thing. They'll try to eat you. I would bet, yes, gators in the bay would probably be very unhappy and quite and probably meaner. That does make sense. Louisiana is an interesting place though. The other big thing that, of course, the bill does is, as Kalasia says, gives tax cuts to billionaires, the oligarchy. And, one thing about the tax cuts is Trump's 2017 tax cuts were expiring. They were set to expire this year, or they already have or something. We're around the deadline. I don't know if it already passed or it's about to pass. And the big thing about the bill was making sure that the tax cuts went back into place. So some people have to, well, they're not tax cuts, they're extensions of the same taxes. Well, no, because those tax cuts expired. So it's not extending those tax cuts. They're actually new tax cuts that are just the same as the old tax cuts, which I know is kind of a semantic argument, but it's not the original tax cuts. They are new tax cuts because those expired. Mississippi, I'm sorry, Titan. I'm sorry. It has to do with lots of things in Congress with like how reconciliation works and the things that the parliamentarian was upset about, that sort of thing, as to why they're structured different ways. But overall, the overall effect is the same. The richest 1% have to pay less taxes than they did yesterday.
And all the deficit hawks are quiet as they balloon the deficit more.
Yeah, Shadow. Oh, Jer, we're getting back to that comment in a second. They said no tax on tips, but that's a lie. It's a tax exemption that has a cap. Very good point, Shadow. I'm glad you brought that up because I probably would have forgotten. Yes, it is a tax exemption on up to $7,000, I think, was in the final bill. Someone needs to look it up and fact check.
Which, if you're a tipped worker, considering most of your salary, the federal minimum wage for tipped workers is only like $4 an hour.
Yeah, or I think it's even less.
No, I think it got raised up to $4.
Maybe it is $4. Yeah.
I mean, back when I was working as a server, it was only $2 and change. Yeah, $2.15.
Yeah,
that sounds about right. It was around the same time that minimum wage was like $5.50
right
an hour. This was like early aughts.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's about $4 an hour for tipped workers, which means that to even get, to minimum wage, which we'll just round to $8, your half of your income would then need to be coming from tips. You're going to reach that $7,000 cap.
And I don't remember if the cap is 7,000. That's just the number that's
regardless
in my head. And I know it changed a couple of times too.
Yeah, but regardless, I seriously doubt that the cap is going to be high enough, to make it where it is effectively a no tax on tips.
But one of the big reasons how we got to where we are as a society right now is the fact that we have a society wherein we have a whole class of workers that you can pay $4 an hour and expect that the people who come in and see them will tip them enough for them to make a living wage. I mean, that's how backwards are we that even exists? I mean, I put up this post today on Blue Sky. It's this 30-year-old ad. I'm going to put it up on the screen here. I thought that I said it and I did not. But this is an ad from 1996. It'd only take me a second to grab this. About what was going to happen in 30 years. And it's very, very, very surprising, maybe unsurprisingly, accurate. It's very, very accurate. So let me grab that here in just is it here? Oh, it always messes with me when I try to do this. See, this is why I don't share stuff very often, because it makes it very difficult for me to share. Okay. I think I finally got it. Share my screen. I understand. Let's proceed. Just share the screen, please. There we go. Is that sharing? Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Yeah. So hold on, let me show this crap out. I was looking at RVs. It's a magazine ad from 1996. They say in 30 years, a burger and fries could cost $16, a vacation $12,500, and a basic car $65,000. Hey, guess what? It's 29 years later. A burger and fries cost about $16. A vacation for $12,500. I don't know where you're going because that's cheap. And a basic car $65,000. That's a little high, but it's not far off. The basic car is today between $30,000 and $40,000. So it's actually not that far off from where we actually ended up. It's actually
And honestly,
hi,
I
Mike.
think the only reason,
Good to see you.
you know, why you know, cars haven't jacked up higher is because we kind of, we've kept, this whole like by not focusing on public transit where cars are, a luxury item,
Yeah,
uh, they are a necessity. So if we had stronger public transit where a car is a luxury item, then they probably would be up at that $65,000 range where it's like, yeah, it's nice if you can afford one, but if you can get anywhere you need to go with public transit and not need the car,
right.
then it can be afford to be priced in the luxury area. But
Sure.
then we're also not allowing, say, like EVs from China that are way less expensive than the EVs that we have here,
Right.
um,
Right.
and are really good vehicles. I mean, same thing with some Asian built pickup trucks. Like, there's some amazing Asian built trucks that you won't get here just because like they want to, incentivize essentially the sale of F-350s that are gas guzzlers because again, it's all like leading to that fossil fuel industry and
Yep.
the gas subsidies that make the oligarchs money.
Well, in addition to that, and by the way, Franklin is right here. If you saw a head and a tail, you saw Franklin there for a second. Hi, buddy. How you doing? Oh yeah, we saw Schnoz. Okay. The other thing about cars is it's very similar to what's happening to homes in that they're treated as an asset. So your car will retain some of its value for trade-in, right? Your home is seen as an appreciating asset. Your car is seen as a depreciating asset, but it is expected that your car will retain some of its value for when you trade it in for your next vehicle. What that does is that keeps used car prices higher. And so if a used car from a few years old is $30,000 or a brand new car is $30,000, it's about the same. Well, I'll just get the used car and I'll get better features for the same price, or, better gas mileage, whatever it is that you're looking for. Even though cars don't really hold their value very well, a lot of vehicles aren't, they start to have a lot of mechanical problems between 3, 5, and then especially at 7 years. They still retain their monetary value because you're expected to trade in your old car for your new car.
And then it gets scrapped for parts.
Right. And even though they're a depreciating asset, they still retain some level of. We've reached the part of the show where I absolutely have to pet Franklin or he'll start licking all over my arm. So that's what's going on over here to my left. Yeah, Mike, that's I wanted to bring that up too. I'm glad you said that. There are safety standards with some of the overseas cars and trucks that they either don't meet them here or they're just the pedestrian standards aren't the same. So that is a part of it as well. And there's a bit of a conspiracy theory somewhat within the car communities where they say, well, some of these safety standards, in fact, Elon Musk has made this point. Some of the safety standards in the US are arbitrarily set too high so that it's harder to bring it to import vehicles from overseas. I mean, I think that those overseas car makers could meet the safety standards they want. Maybe they just don't want to, it has a lot to do with like stuff with like bumpers and sensors and cameras and things. And airbags is another one. But it's still because the main reason is the capitalism, the assumption that the things that you buy must retain at least some of its value so that you can use it to make your next purchase. It's consumerism. So
Speaking of that, consumerism and the fact that we have relatively cheap consumer goods is one of the reasons why we haven't had a Marie Antoinette moment yet. And the fact that social safety net programs done by FDR were put into
every show,
effect. Hey,
every show,
every show. I will.
every show.
After the Great Depression, FDR essentially saved the grand,
It's
American
true.
experiment
The New
with
Deal.
the New Deal. And it bought us, 100 years,
Mhm.
basically, because we would be at the cliff that we're about to like tip over. Now that the big beautiful disaster has passed, we're going to see things get really really bad really really quick when you have people not able to feed their kids, or their kids get kicked off of Medicaid when they require it to stay alive. And again, going back to FDR, he said, like, one of the reasons why Trump was able to come to power was because, like, the basic needs of the people were not fully met. Yeah, we were distracted by Netflix and by cheap consumer goods and relatively cheap gasoline compared to the rest of the developed world, anyway.
Sure.
And so we had these distractions where we're like, yeah, things are kind of bad and my money doesn't go as far as it used to. But, hey, I've got Netflix and chill, and, I've got a decent vehicle, and I've got some awesome, like, doohickeys and doodads that keep my attention. But when people can't afford those things, or, when they are no longer able to put food on the table, or their kids start dying, because they don't have access to healthcare anymore, that's when things are going to get bad. And fascism, FDR said, you can convince a man to give fascism a try if he's worried about how to feed his family. And
Right.
that's
I mean,
basically how we got Trump.
well, that's what Hitler did. Hitler rose to power on the fact that Germany was struggling after World War I economically, and he was like, "Well, I could fix it. Hitler
Yeah.
alone can fix it."
Mhm.
Who does that sound like? So yeah, I was having this talk with my nephew yesterday. He's 14, and I was explaining. He said, "Well, where did the word fascist come from?" So I explained to him how it comes from. I think it's fascisa. I think is the Italian word. But it's the word that means a bundle of sticks is stronger together than as as single. But which is this thing that, oh well, you're a nationalist, you're a patriot, you love your nation, right? You right, don't you? And you're like, well, yeah, I love my nation. And they're like, oh, okay, well, those people don't, so we should kill them. You're like, wait. And that's where the fascism gets dangerous, right?
Well, it's
So
the difference between patriotism and nationalism. Patriotism is saying,
right,
hey, I love my country, but it's got some issues and maybe we could address those. And
right,
nationalism is, I love my country and I think it is the best country and it can do no wrong. And anyone who disagrees with that is the enemy and we need to kick them out or kill them.
right. And the idea behind it's the reason why they have to dehumanize people, because conservatism versus liberalism breaks down to a very simple argument. Is conformity okay, or is difference okay? Because at its base, conservatism says everyone must conform, everyone must be exactly the same, and any deviation from that is abnormal, weird, or means that you're inhuman, however strong they want it to go. Whereas the idea behind liberalism was, well, everyone is inherently different, and so we should celebrate those differences instead of demonizing them or dehumanizing over them. And MAGA is now at this point where that all fascist movements get to, where everything is the litmus test. do you meet the purity test to be a part of MAGA? It's the reason why you see all the MAGA women at Mar-a-Lago all dressing and looking the same, which is super weird, but they all have the
Stepford Wives
same
shit.
blonde. It's super weird, but that's a natural extension of fascism. And everyone appears the same. Even your appearance meets a litmus test. There's a purity of appearance. And then the extension of that is, of course, eugenics, where literally your genes must be the same. Like your genetic makeup must be the same, not just your appearance. You must wear your uniform. And your genes must be in the proper sequence and everything. So, you extend out from patriotism, which, as Kitty said, very, very normal to say, oh, I love my country. I'm proud of my country. And my country has done these great things that I'm very proud of. However, my country has also done these awful things that I am not proud of, that I feel are shameful, that need to change in the future. And that will then run into these issues with nationalists that say, no, the country is great. The country has always been great. And those atrocities that were committed either just weren't committed, we'll just ignore them, or they were committed to further the cause of the nation. So therefore they're justified. It's why the idea behind horse. Oh my God. Horseshoe theory politics has never made sense to me because they don't come back to the same thing, right? At their extremes. The extreme of right-wing ideology is that either you're either with us or you're against us. You're either part of the in-group or you are the enemy and you are to be eradicated or exiled, whatever it is. Where, the left-wing ideology that's never where it reaches. The further left you get, the more accepting you get, the more celebratory you get of difference.
Well, and the fact of the matter is human beings are capable of incredible amounts of cruelty when we dehumanize people. Look at the Stanford prison experiment. Look at Marina Abramovic's performance piece back in the 70s, where she basically stood in a room with a table with a bunch of objects on it, everything from a feather, lipstick, knives, a gun, and she invited the audience to use the objects on her. And at first people were gentle and kind, and she was the performance art, but eventually it got horrible. Like they were cutting her and ripping off her clothes, and one person even put the gun to her head and tried to get her to pull the trigger.
Wow.
And again, when people think there are no consequences, or when they have dehumanized a person, and that's what they did after the performance went on for a little while, they had successfully watched her allow these people to do these things and dehumanized her, just like the Stanford prison experiment allowed the guard students to dehumanize the inmate students and
Right.
allowed them to do horrific things to these people. Or there have been tons and tons of examples of this, where whenever one human dehumanizes another, like it makes it almost okay
Yeah.
for some people that it's, well, you're not like me. It's why we tend to have much more empathy for things like with faces, that we can see emotion and expressiveness on. We don't really feel empathy for a fish, because while they have faces, they're not expressive faces. But like a cat, a dog,
Right.
even a cow or a horse, they have expressive faces. And we tend to, not humanize, because those are animals, but we tend to empathize with
Anthropomorphous.
anthropomorphism.
Thank you. Yes, it's one of the reasons why dogs evolved the ability to smile. It's not because they're expressing emotion through their smile. They express emotion through wagging their tail. They smile to get us to give them something, to recognize, to say, "Oh, you're smiling. You must be happy. Let me give you pets. Let me give you a snack." They don't smile to express their own emotion.
It's
They do it.
emotional blackmail and
It's
extortion.
emotional blackmailing. Absolutely. Yeah, Titan. Just I know. That's why we give prison numbers to inmates. Shadow is correct. Vagabond brings a point that I'm glad you brought up, because I meant to mention this and I forgot. Funny how the core beliefs of nationalism walk hand in hand with religion. I'm right because I said I was right. Yeah, in fact, Mike Johnson said today that rights come from God. He literally said that today on the floor of Congress.
So much
The
for
entire,
glorifying the
okay.
Constitution.
For most of human history, we have been ruled under something called the divine right of kings. And this was universal in Sumeria, in China, in what became Russia, whatever old empire you want to talk about. You had the divine right of kings that said royalty was in power because God wanted them in power, and therefore the laws that they declared were from God. And whether it was, a pantheon of gods or just one god or a couple of gods, whatever it is, the divine right of kings is how humanity has been ruled for the vast majority of humanity's existence within civilized nations. Okay. Back to Samaria, 8,000 years ago, whatever it was. The Enlightenment, Jefferson gave voice to things that Locke didn't always say. Locke was afraid of getting his head cut off, right? He was in England. So if he'd said, by the way, you govern at the consent of the governed, they would have cut his head off in the middle of the street. The king would have cut it off himself. But Jefferson had an ocean between him and the king. And so he was able to write that down. He was able to say, it's the right and the duty. Locke never said duty. It's the right and the duty of a people who faced with tyranny to abolish their government. That's what he wrote in the Declaration of Independence. Abolish. Locke, again, the king himself would have castrated him and then beheaded him if he'd said that.
It would have been a Rasputin death.
Yeah,
all the deaths.
Drawn and quartered. Have you seen Braveheart? Have you seen the end of Braveheart? Like that. So Locke was alluding to all of these things, but it was really Jefferson who took it across the finish line. And I have lots of problems with Jefferson. I'm not, we know about Jefferson and slaves, and that's not what this is about. We're just talking about Declaration.
Even horrible people can have good ideas.
Absolutely. And he was a horrible person. He wrote the document. There's nothing I can do about it. But what the Declaration says, the Declaration is literally an indictment. And Nancy Mace today said it wasn't an indictment. It's literally an indictment. Literally, it lists all of the crimes that the king has committed. Like, goes one after the other, after the other. It's like 2 pages long of all the things that he's done. The Declaration of Independence was meant to be, hey, this isn't working. And it's not that it's not that this being ruled by you, King George, isn't working. It's that the divine right of kings is not working. It doesn't work for people because the divine right of kings works for the king, but it doesn't work for anyone else because it's not meant to. And the most important thing, in my opinion, that Jefferson wrote in that document was that rights are inalienable. Something that is inalienable, it means that alien is outside. It can't be taken from you. A government can curtail it. They can prohibit it. They can restrict it. But they literally cannot take from you the right that you have to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And all human beings have that right at the moment of their creation, birth, first breath, whatever terminology you want to use. That was an attack, not just on King George, but on the idea of divine law, which is how humanity had always been ruled. And King George even said to Parliament, and some of the Parliament people said similar things, this isn't just an attack on England. This is an attack on law. This is an attack on history. That these men in this colony over here, surrounded by forests and snakes and oceans, are telling me that I don't have the right to tax them? I mean, he was pissed. He's like, what are you talking about? Of course I have the right to tax you. You're my colony, and God said I'm in charge. And so what has been happening over the past about 2 decades in the United States is this push to be like, nah, divine right of kings. We just need a guy, literally, in charge who's going to tell us what's up and just make the decisions. And the Democrats have played into it when they've been in power. I'm sorry, Obama issued far too many signing statements and executive orders after saying he wouldn't. It's my biggest gripe with Obama, and I loved the man. I voted for him twice. You know, I'm not Obama bashing, but he had too many signing statements and he had too many executive orders, and he pushed boundaries that he should not have been pushing. Bush did too, but Obama really continued it after saying that he wouldn't. He literally said, I taught constitutional law and executive orders are unconstitutional, and I won't be using signing statements. These are all things he said during the 2008 campaign, and then he did it. And, you know,
power corrupts.
Power corrupts, absolutely. And now here we are, you know, and it's not just Obama, of course. Biden issued a bunch of executive orders that I was like, can we just stop? We didn't, and he didn't expand the court like he could have. You know, it's whatever.
And like things that he did have within his power to, you know, like forgive student loan debt that wouldn't require an executive order, but because, you know, he's in charge, you know, he could have just directed that all of the debt held by the government could have been released. That was within his right to do, and he didn't.
I mean, you know, the thing is, I'm kind of tired of looking backwards and being like, hey, it's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault, because it's not going to get us anywhere, and we've got a lot of work to do now. But, you know, this is more about just how did we get here? So I don't want this to be like, oh, you know, Dom's attacking Obama, and he's attacking Biden, he's attacking Democrats. I'm not. I'm just saying, how did we end up with the Speaker of the House saying the rights come from God? He said that today.
Fair. Like that goes back to even before Obama, though, because the same people
that
deify the founding fathers in the Constitution, they have courted a religious voting bloc where you see them paying at least lip service to religious dogma, like more and more, just to keep, you know, the Southern strategy and getting the religious right, you know, voting bloc. Like that really put the pedal to the metal on getting us back to this point where originally it's like no kings, and now all of a sudden the same people that, you know, are rah-rah America, 4th of July, founding fathers were gods among men, are ready to just say, oh yeah, everything that they wanted, you know, like independence from a monarch. Yeah, no, let's be a monarchy again. But they don't want to go back to being the British monarchy, you know, even though we'd have health care. At least if we became if we became a colony again, at least we'd have fucking health care and college. So I mean, you know.
Yeah, I had a history teacher who said something once that really pissed me off at the time. We were learning about the history of Russia. This was 11th or 12th grade. And Russia has had several empires rise and fall, you know, over the years. And he said, well, this was my teacher who said this. He was also a football coach. So, you know, it's one of those situations. He said, well, I think the Russian people just like a strong leader. So, you know, that's just how it is. That's just what Russians like, which was really offensive and racist. It's like, no, I remember being really pissed. Like, what the fuck is this movie? I think what it is, and this does not only pertain to Russia, of course, this pertains to all humans, is that a divine king makes things a lot easier. Well, that's the king said. You don't have to argue because you're not allowed to argue. It's against the law to argue. It's against the law to criticize the king. So if the king says that, then that's what it is.
I mean, while I disagree with it, you know, at least when it comes to politics and everything, like I can understand that there is a certain freedom in submission and just not being the
I wouldn't even
decision
call it
maker.
freedom. It's not actual. It's freedom of responsibility. You're free from responsibility because you can't change it anyway. So there's nothing I can do about it. So it frees you from being responsible for actually engaging and doing
Or
the
the
work that it would
consequences,
require.
because you'd be like, "Well, I didn't do it. Like, they did it. It wasn't me. So don't look at me. I'm not responsible."
Yeah, Shadow, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. Like it's both of you, you and Kitty are saying the exact same thing. And you're both right. I mean, it's difficult because it's so infuriating. Because we fought so hard, and I'm talking about humanity, fought so hard to say, no, we don't want a king. And yeah, it's going to take a lot more work to run a government that we're responsible for, but we're willing to take it on. For these guys to just be like, nah, no, we're not going to have any responsibility. We're the guy with the hair just is going to do it.
Another reason why we ended up here, Roger Ailes and Rupert Murdoch, we would not be in this current state if it weren't for the constant stream of bullshit misinformation
Yeah,
that Fox News and all of the little fucking offshoots that have come since then. Nixon would not have, resigned if he had a Fox News behind him.
right. I mean, that's why Ailes wanted to set it up. I mean, him and Roger Stone just decided we're never getting in this situation with a conservative ever again. And we're going to do whatever it takes to, Stone and Manafort, and Black. I mean, the three of them were together, Stone, Manafort, and Black. That was the name of the law firm. But, Stone and Manafort together were like, we're going to make sure that the next time a conservative is in office, they stay in power forever. I mean, that was the idea behind their firm. And, they were very successful with getting Reagan to do things they wanted him to do to help some dictators that the United States should not have been helping. And they were very successful in making sure that the Iran-Contra affair, there was almost no... When you think about the Iran-Contra affair, we sold weapons to
To what
both
became Al-Qaeda.
sides of a conflict and watched them kill each other, knowing that they were using them on each other. And then we were like, and there were really Oliver North was it. That was it. And he was punished-ish, but not that bad. And
Reagan escaped, really any of the stink
sure,
of
he
it.
just
Yes,
I
some
don't
people
remember.
might have talked about it, but it didn't really follow him. It didn't
No,
damage his legacy as
nope,
Saint Reagan to the Republicans.
right. And they asked somebody, he's like, oh, I don't remember. I just don't remember any of these conversations. They were like, all right, bye. And that was it. And then a bunch of the people that were in his administration then worked in both Bush administrations. So, the people that were involved and responsible just did a bunch of it again. Maybe not as bad as the first time, but they were in power when the people that they had empowered in Iran turned into Al-Qaeda and attacked 9/11, and no one held them accountable. I mean, that's not true. Some of us tried. If you weren't around, there were some of us in the mid 2000s who said things like that there was an attempted genocide in Gaza. 20 years ago, we were saying that. 20 years ago, we were saying Bibi Netanyahu was a war criminal. I know you think that it just happened like last year that people started saying that. We were saying that 2 decades ago, and we were viciously attacked as anti-Semites at the time, by the way. We said things like, oh,
or terrorist sympathizer. That was one.
Oh yeah, that I was a terrorist sympathizer. Yeah, I was told that too. We said, hey, that's Dick Cheney and Donald Rumsfeld in charge in Bush too. You know that they were involved in the Iran-Contra thing that created Al-Qaeda, right? Like, should they be Secretary of Defense and Vice President right
And
now.
also, 17 of the 19 hijackers came from Saudi
Saudi
Arabia.
Arabia, and then you'd bring that
Like,
up, and they'd be like, "Oh, are
we're
you?"
still on good terms with Saudi Arabia.
Oh,
But
so I would
17
be
of the 19 hijackers from
in
Saudi Arabia.
2000. When did they pull out of Gaza the first time? Was it or the West Bank? Was it 2005, 2006? Anyway, around that time, from like 2002 to 2006, on any given day, I either hated my country, I was an anti-Semite, I was an Islamophobe, I was a terrorist sympathizer, I was, let's see, I was a communist. I was all of them. I was everything because I was just I was like, you know, this is
This
bad.
was back
Is
during
this
the
bad?
Freedom Fries. This was back
Oh my
during the Freedom
God.
Fries.
So, like when people attack me on Blue Sky Today for stuff, I was just like, dude, whatever, anything that you say to me, I heard in 2002 to 2006 already. Like, you're not, it's just,
And I was on the right
I've
side of
heard it all.
history then, and a lot of people that are
I've heard
saying
it
it
all.
to you now
Right.
are, they
And
were
of
on the
course,
wrong
back
side
then it was more about it. If you don't know, quick history lesson: Israel tried to move into the West Bank in 2000, or they did move into the West Bank, not try. No, it was the late 90s, I think, when they started. And then there was a bunch of the settlements were ruled against international law. And Israel was like, well, we're already there. And this is our homeland too. So we have to stay. And then they did a unilateral pullout in 2005 after there was some fighting. So like a bunch of the stuff that's happening, it wasn't as bad as what's happening in Gaza today. Sure. But there have been attempts at this for a long time by the same people that are doing it today. And we've been calling it out since, and no one's ever done anything about it.
Ben-Gvir, Smotrich, Bibi Netanyahu, like the top war criminals of the Israeli regime.
Right. I know, Shadow. I know. That's why I just laugh it off. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. All right, kiddo. Yeah. Sure, kiddo. Absolutely.
Oh my God, that makes me feel really old considering I was in high school.
Yeah, that was, I mean, it was, college for me, but
oh yeah, you're a couple years
I am not mostly.
I mean, I'm probably closer to a communist than Dom is.
Closer to a communist. I am
I'm just saying, like, if I ever like end up like getting like a winning lotto ticket, or like, just manna from heaven falls down in my backyard, I'm abso-fucking-lutely going to build a commune in the middle of the woods. It's going to be a kinky, crafty commune that like all of my queer people and anybody who needs it has a place. Like it doesn't matter, my goal is to have my own
have your own like co-op commune and co-op,
like a co-op. It would basically, I call it a commune, but it would be closer to a co-op, but for those that couldn't work, like they would, just
there's a lot of land
do
out
what
west.
you can.
There's a lot of land out
contribute
there.
what you can, and everybody's basic needs are met.
Sure. Titan, I think it was Soy Boy Cuck, I think is what I was called. I don't even remember what it was for anymore. Was that when I argued with that, debated with that Nazi guy?
It might have been.
Was it? I think that's
Although,
what it was.
to be
It was
fair,
that weird
usually
Nazi
it's
guy.
the Nazis that are the cuckolds.
I mean, I don't know. That guy was so weird. And he just wouldn't he was just like, well, why do you think blah, blah, blah? And I'd be like, well, that is, okay. Well, why do you think blah, blah, blah? And it was like, he had no follow-ups. It was like, all right.
It's like trying to argue.
He had like 50,000 followers.
Younger creationist or flat earther. Like,
it could have been a flat earther too. Was it a side chat troll? Is that what it was? Anyway, it's fine. It doesn't matter. It was, who gives a shit?
It was a while ago.
Yeah, Jer. It's one of the reasons why it's the same reason why I don't like call people, for the most part, bitches, cunts, that sort of thing, just because there's like that misogynistic overtone to it. It's one of the reasons why I don't do that. I'll say things like bitchiest, which I said the other day, but I was meaning more like they bitch, not like a bitch, you know, like complain. I'll use it in those terms.
I don't know.
But
I
yeah,
get too many Aussie and Brit friends that, you know, cunt is essentially like if you tell them they're not allowed to say that word, like they will consider it a hate crime
yeah, exactly. And like,
because it is just part of their vocabulary.
absolutely. Oh yeah. If I hang out with Aussies, I mean, you know, they
It's
use
a term of
it's like a
endearment.
comma. Sure.
Yeah.
So, you know, that's a little bit, but it's one of the reasons why I don't use cuck either, just because it is so, it just comes from a natural misogynistic place.
Yet as
And
somebody in the kink community, like there's absolutely nothing wrong with that so long as everybody is on board for
well,
it, you
there's a
know?
lot of disabled people on Blue Sky that have brought things up that have made me reconsider how I insult, which I'm very thankful for. And it's one of the reasons why I'll say stuff like troglodyte, because troglodyte has, it's one of the reasons why like calling somebody dumb, well, that has roots in anti-disabled language, right? And so, you know, because dumb was somebody that was mute, and you know, it morphed into becoming stupid, so it has roots. But troglodyte is from a Latin term that just means somebody who's not,
Cave
uh,
was it cave dweller?
huh?
No, I'm trying to remember what like the actual definition of that word is and not like, you know, in the common
Oh,
parlance.
troglodyte.
Yeah.
It's like somebody who is intentionally ignorant.
No, like I thought that was the term in like a
No, no, no,
scientific
you're
term.
thinking of a trilobite,
Oh, okay, that might be
yeah,
it.
not a troglodyte. A very different thing.
I
Um,
have not caffeinated enough, obviously.
no, I got you. Or churl. I like saying churl because churl is a mean-spirited person, just a person who's mean-spirited. You haven't heard churl, but you've heard churlish. People who are churlish. And churl is just a person who is churlish.
Well, it's
It's
like
not really in
hysteria.
use
Like
anymore.
saying someone's being hysterical, it goes back to, you know, female hysteria when if
Right,
a woman happened to have an opinion or, you know,
right,
was considered like uppity, then all
right,
of a sudden she gets a hysteria diagnosis.
right. Or Luna. It was for the same lunatic. Is from the
Lunatic. Yeah.
same word. Anyway, um, oh Titan. No, no, no. I like to insult. I just yeah, yeah. Well, and it's the same thing with like crippled or Luddite. Yes, yes. Troglodyte is from Luddite. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. But going back to, well, now I lost it. I don't know. Oh yeah, Cretan. Going back to, it's like saying crippled or what's the other one? Anyway, but yeah, they're all medically ableist. They're all from a disabled, you know, from dehumanizing the disabled, essentially. You know, I don't want to. That's not the person I want to be, right? So I got out of that terminology. I mean, the slur for trans people. I used to use that term all the time because we've talked about this before. That's the short name for a transmission in a car. So when you talk about a transmission in a car, it's the same word. It has literally nothing to do with trans people from whatsoever. It's just a shortening of transmission in a vehicle. But
I
I've
mean,
stopped using the word,
yeah,
right? Um, and it's not
um, you know,
playing a recent,
the slang for a cigarette
yeah,
in the UK is a
yeah, yeah,
slur
yeah,
for queer people.
right.
So,
Um, there's a Need for Speed game, like the 2021 Need for Speed game, like a very recent Need for Speed game, where one of the main characters uses that term. Now, again, they're talking about the transmission in a car. He's saying you need to update your transmission, is what he's saying. But it's like a very recent game, and the main character, I don't know if it's the main character, it's one of the main characters says that word, and it, like you hear it, and you're like, ooh, oof. Anyway,
aged like milk.
um, yes, Andreas, exactly. Don't adopt the language of your enemies. Your language shows what you think, but it's two-way street. It also shapes your way of thinking, exactly. And that's why, like, I don't care about like cursing. Like, I don't care about fuck and shit and piss and whatever. But using that type of terminology, even if I have no intentions to dehumanize trans people or disabled people or anything, um, it's just not the kind of representation I want to be to the world, right? And so I just choose to use different language.
But I can see the argument for, reclaiming a word if you are part of that group, like I think, but that kind of comes down to like the individual and also like that group in general, like how, queer people have taken back the word queer when,
Sure.
it was once,
Sure.
a derogatory term
Well,
for
and
people like us.
if I was trans, maybe using that word, I would feel different about using that word. But like, I don't use the N word either. You know what I mean? Like there's a reason. Like I don't like using slurs because I want to be better than that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm a disabled person. I use a mobility aid, and
Sure.
there are times that I will take the piss out of myself of saying things like, "Yeah, my crippled ass is not gonna
Right.
run the mile. That is not happening. Like,
Right.
just not happening." But
Sure.
again, it is me talking about myself. I
Right.
would never use it against another disabled person
Exactly. Exactly.
because even though, I feel comfortable enough, and like if I wanted to say, the F word, I personally don't like that word, but I could again as a queer person, but like I just don't like that word, so I don't
Sure.
use it. And again, I would not use an ableist slur or an ableist word against another person unless it was like another disabled friend and it's like we have that banter, like it's like we know each other,
Right. Well,
as
and
opposed to like, using it to take the piss out of myself or just,
and,
just
and I'm
for myself when referencing
right.
myself and not other people.
Yes, and Titan brings up an interesting point. This is another part of another reason why I don't want to do it. Um, the word that Titan's talking about here, I was like 11 years old before I realized it referred to gay people.
I'm sorry,
Okay,
that's
I was
adorable.
embarrassingly old. I just thought it meant somebody who was unintelligent. That's what I thought. You have to understand. I have a brother who is 5 years older than me. And he and his friends would call me that all the time in a derogatory way. And I have an older cousin who also did. And so I just thought it meant dummy, dumbass, whatever. I had zero idea that it also referred to being gay. And I remember I had to have been at like 10 or 11 years old before I was like, oh, that also means gay people? Oh, wait. Like they've been calling me gay for years? Why? Anyway. Um,
I mean,
yeah,
I
no,
can't
Titan,
really
sure. That's
say.
what I'm saying. Like, I'm just a boring ass straight dude. Like, I shouldn't be using any of the slurs at all, or anything that even is remotely, ableist or anti anything. Like, I need to watch my freaking mouth. I'm not saying anybody else needs to. I'm saying I need to get the fuck out of the way because of what men who have looked like me have done to the rest of you for an embarrassingly long time.
All right, like, considering at least, you were 11 when you learned, like, I mean,
Sure.
granted, like, this isn't, like, a bad word, but I was in my early 20s before I had ever heard the word atheist. So, like, when I first
Oh,
heard it, I was like, "I think I know what that means," because I, like, know what the words
mhm.
mean separately,
Right.
but, like,
Atheist. Right.
I had to Google what is an
Wow.
atheist at, like, 21 years old because I had
Wow.
never heard the word before.
Wow.
So, there you
All
go.
right. Well,
Like, there's
listen.
an embarrassing, linguistic story about
Ex-
me.
Exactly, Mike. We've done enough damage. I'm trying to, in my own tiny, tiny way, not perpetuate anymore. How successful am I going to be? I don't know. I don't know. Listen, we're going to get the heck out of here. I love you guys. You
Hopefully, it
know,
doesn't all burn down soon, like
normally it's July 3rd, and I would be going to bed at the end of my birthday. And I would be happily on social media saying, hey guys, have a happy Independence Day.
not this
Uh,
way.
you know, here's what I'll say instead. We were talking about this before the show started, and I've read history, right? So I am aware of how this ends. 100% of the time, tyranny is overthrown. 100% of the time. Now, often in history, it was just replaced with other tyranny. But thankfully, in more recent memory, tyranny has, more often than not, been replaced with something more free. Not in every case. Not saying that. Plenty of places where it hasn't. I think in some instances, the American empire officially died today. That doesn't mean that we cannot once again find ourselves and build something better than what we had. But that will take all of us, including the millions and millions of people that have no idea that this show exists or that I exist, and that will never hear these words. But we can fix this. We can fix it peaceably. We can fix it the right ways. But it will take far more work than any of us has done up to this point. I will tell you that much.
Mm-hmm.
So, just keep that in mind tomorrow when you're hearing fireworks and shit go off. Kitty, how do you want to end things? What do you want to say?
I mean, I'm a bit doomered, and while I'm, fingers crossed, we make it out the other side of this with something, better, and that doesn't devolve into non-peaceful means. The fact of the matter is, I am not. Let's just say I wouldn't be willing to bet money on it just because of how bad things are going to get, how quickly once the bill is signed and once those cuts to Medicare, Medicaid, SNAP go actually into effect and actually affect people's bottom lines. And already it had been found that some 60,000 Americans die each year because they don't have access to health care. Now, the CBO, I believe it was the CBO, or it might have been another another group that did an impact analysis on this big, beautiful disaster, that an additional 53,000 Americans will die each year because of losing their health care. So if you add that to the 60 some odd thousand that we expect each year, regardless, because they don't have adequate access to health care, adding another, 60 or add another 50,000, you're looking at over 100,000 Americans a year dying because they don't have access to health care. And some of those Americans are going to be kids. And those parents, the fastest way to radicalize somebody is to fuck with their kids.
Yep.
And so it's like watching a fucking train, like an oncoming train, and I can see it. The country is on the tracks and I can see the train coming, and I know what's going to happen when the train gets here. But no matter how much I shout into the void, no matter how many calls I've made, no matter what, I'm still one person with one vote. And while yes, I got other people to go out and vote, my reach is not large enough to counter the misinformation bubble and just to reach the apathetic voters that they just listen to Fox News because it's just happens to be on at their doctor's office, and it's a fucking propaganda machine getting people to gobble up this slop so that billionaires can get more tax cuts and so that people at the bottom can suffer for, the sake of capitalism.
Well said, my friend.
And exhausting.
Anyway, happy
But
fucking birthday to me, I guess.
Yeah, happy birthday to you, since I'm not really celebrating the 4th of July this
By
year.
the way, my Venmo's Dom Irvo, if you want to send me some money. I want to buy some pizza.
Ooh, pizza sounds good.
That's what I want to buy. Anyway, I love you guys. Thanks for watching. And we'll see you next time. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.